In 1989, a man stepped into the flickering light of a local news station in Las Vegas and announced that he had spent months reverse engineering alien spacecraft. He didn't call them airplanes or rockets. He called them craft of unknown origin, powered by a stable isotope that did not exist on the periodic table at the time. This was Bob Lazar, and for decades, his story was treated as a dangerous fabrication or the ramblings of a madman. Yet, decades later, the very element he described, element 115, was officially synthesized, and the bizarre flight characteristics he witnessed are being mirrored in cockpit footage released by the Department of Defense. The question is no longer just whether he was lying, but why the world was told to look away from the Nevada desert for so long. The story begins at a site known as S-4, located just miles away from the infamous Area 51. According to Lazar, this wasn't just another military base. It was a laboratory for the impossible, hidden inside a mountain. He described a series of hangars, camouflaged with sand and local shrubbery, to blend perfectly with the desert landscape, hiding technology that defied every known law of physics. When he first entered one of these craft, which he nicknamed the Sport model, he didn't find the expected clutter of wires, control panels, or jet engines. Instead, he found a smooth, seamless interior that appeared to have been injected into a mold rather than built by human hands. There were no visible welds, no bolts, and the seats were sized for something much smaller than an average adult human. It was a machine that looked like it had grown rather than been manufactured. At the heart of this technology was a small, triangular reactor. Lazar claimed this device used a rare fuel source to generate a gravity wave so powerful it could bend the very fabric of space and time. He identified this fuel as element 115, a heavy metal that possessed unique properties, allowing it to create its own gravitational field. In the late 80s, the periodic table ended at element 109.
Look at the decay
To the
rates
scientific
here.
community of the time,
If they are-
Lazar's claims were an absurdity, a leap into science fiction that lacked any empirical foundation. It wasn't until 2003 that a team of Russian and American scientists finally synthesized element 115, now known as Moscovium. While the synthesized version is highly unstable and decays in milliseconds, Lazar maintained that the version he worked with was a stable isotope harvested from a location elsewhere in the universe where such heavy elements occur naturally. The propulsion system Lazar described was even more radical than the fuel itself. Instead of pushing against the air like a traditional turbine or using combustion to create thrust, these crafts allegedly manipulated gravity. By focusing 3 gravity emitters at a single point in space, the craft could pull that point toward itself, essentially shortening the distance between 2 locations. It wasn't moving through space, it was moving space through itself. This would explain the sudden, jarring movements often reported in unidentified aerial phenomena. The ability to stop, turn, and accelerate at thousands of miles per hour without creating a sonic boom or crushing any pilot inside with extreme G-forces. To the observer, it would look like magic. To Lazar, it was a terrifyingly advanced form of engineering. The tension in Lazar's narrative isn't just about the technology, but the price he paid for revealing its existence. Shortly after he went public, his life began to unravel in ways that seemed straight out of a Cold War thriller. His birth records disappeared. His educational transcripts from prestigious institutions like MIT and Caltech vanished, with the schools claiming they had no record of his attendance. To the world, it looked like a man was being erased from existence. However, investigators later found his name listed in a 1982 Los Alamos National Laboratory internal telephone directory, listed right alongside the scientists he claimed to work with. This discrepancy created a chilling paradox. A man who officially didn't exist was somehow integrated into the most sensitive scientific projects in the United States. Critics point to these missing records as proof of a hoax, suggesting that Lazar fabricated his background to gain a sense of false credibility. They argue that his understanding of physics is flawed, and that his descriptions of element 115 don't align with modern nuclear chemistry. Yet, supporters argue that the erasure of his history is exactly what one would expect from a deep-cover security protocol designed to discredit whistleblowers. If the goal was to make a man look like a fraud, the most effective method would be to remove the very foundations of his identity. The conflict between his verifiable presence at Los Alamos and his missing academic history remains one of the most haunting gaps in the story, leaving us to wonder if a person can truly be deleted by the state. The atmosphere at S4 was described as one of intense, suffocating secrecy. Lazar spoke of being followed by unmarked cars, of his home phones being tapped, and of the psychological pressure of knowing he was handling technology that could change the world while being forbidden from speaking a single word of it. He described seeing a brief glimpse of a flight test where the sport model hovered silently, glowing with a faint blue corona as the air around it became ionized by the intense gravitational field. It moved with a fluid, haunting grace that made conventional aircraft look like primitive toys. It was this sight, the realization that humanity was sitting on a secret of this magnitude, that supposedly convinced him that the public had a right to know, regardless of the non-disclosure agreements he had signed in blood. As we look at the modern landscape of aerospace and defense, the echoes of Lazar's testimony are becoming harder for the mainstream to ignore. In recent years, the Navy has declassified footage of objects performing maneuvers that seem to mirror the belly-first orientation Lazar described over 30 years ago. He claimed that when the craft wanted to move rapidly, it would tilt on its side, pointing its gravity emitters at the destination. For decades, this was dismissed as an illogical and impossible way to fly. Then, leaked infrared footage from fighter jets showed anomalous objects doing exactly that, rotating in midair before accelerating at speeds that should have torn any known material apart. The visual evidence was finally catching up to the claims made in a dark television studio in 1989. The mystery of element 115 continues to sit at the center of the debate. While we can now create the element in a laboratory setting, we haven't yet found the stable version Lazar described. Some physicists suggest that a stable island of super-heavy elements might exist further down the periodic table, where the right number of neutrons could prevent rapid decay. If such a material were harvested from a supernova or another cataclysmic stellar event, it could theoretically provide the power source for the kind of anti-gravity propulsion Lazar detailed. The gap between what we can manufacture today and what might exist in the vastness of the cosmos is where the truth of his claims may be hidden, waiting for our science to catch up. The stakes of this mystery are higher than simple curiosity about life on other planets. If a technology exists that can manipulate gravity, it would render our entire global infrastructure obsolete. Fuel, transportation, and even our understanding of the distance between stars would be fundamentally rewritten. This leads to a darker interpretation of the secrecy surrounding S4. It isn't just about hiding extraterrestrial life, but about maintaining control over the most significant energy breakthrough in human history. To release such technology would be to collapse the current global economic order, making the silence of the desert a matter of national and global security. The power to control gravity is, in essence, the power to control the world. Lazar's personal life remained under a microscope long after his initial revelations. He eventually retreated from the spotlight, opening a scientific supply company. But the shadow of S4 followed him through the decades. Years later, his business was raided by federal agents in a massive operation that he believes was an attempt to recover a piece of element 115 he allegedly took from the base as insurance. Official records stated the raid was part of a different investigation, but the timing and the scale of the response suggested a lingering, high-level interest in whatever secrets Lazar might still be holding. The persistent surveillance of a man who was supposed to be a discredited fraud suggests that the authorities take him far more seriously than their public statements would suggest. when we analyze the testimony of other whistleblowers who have surfaced in the last few years, the similarities to Lazar's account are striking. Men with high-level security clearances have come forward to speak about legacy programs and crash retrieval operations that have been hidden from congressional oversight for decades. They describe the same seamless craft, the same lack of visible propulsion, and the same extreme secrecy that Lazar first brought to light. If Lazar was a pioneer of a lie, he was remarkably accurate in predicting the exact nature of the disclosures that would follow 30 years later. Or perhaps he was simply the first one brave enough to describe the reality he saw behind the curtain.
I want to be clear,
the debate often circles back to the man himself. Lazar does not fit the typical profile of a fame seeker. He has often expressed regret for coming forward, citing the destruction of his reputation and the constant legal battles as a burden he never wanted. He doesn't tour the convention circuit or sell merchandise. When he speaks, he does so with a clinical, detached tone, focusing on the mechanics and the physics rather than the sensationalism of extraterrestrial life. This consistency over 3 decades is rare. Most fabrications grow more elaborate over time, but Lazar's story has remained virtually identical since the day he first sat down in front of a camera with his face hidden in the shadows. Science is a process of discovery, and history is full of impossible ideas that eventually became facts. We once believed the sound barrier could never be broken, and that atoms were the smallest unit of matter. The possibility that a stable, heavy element could act as a fuel for gravity manipulation is a frontier we are only beginning to peer into. Whether Lazar actually worked at S4 or was part of a complex disinformation campaign, the questions he raised have forced a conversation about what the government is hiding in the remote corners of the Nevada desert. The secrecy itself is a piece of evidence, a wall built to keep the public from seeing the shape of the future. The silence of the government regarding these claims is often as telling as the claims themselves. While they have admitted to the existence of Area 51, which was denied for decades, they remain tight-lipped about the specific activities at S4. If there truly is nothing there, the level of security and the effort to scrub the history of a single lab technician seems vastly disproportionate. The persistence of the phenomenon in the public consciousness, backed now by radar data and sensor footage, suggests that the sport model Lazar described wasn't a hallucination, but a glimpse at a level of technology that remains classified at the highest levels of the military-industrial complex. The legacy of Bob Lazar is one of profound uncertainty. He occupies the space between a visionary and a pariah, between a whistleblower and a ghost. If he is right, we are living in a world where the most significant discovery in human history is being kept in a mountain, studied by a select few, while the rest of humanity remains tethered to the ground by outdated technology. If he is wrong, he has managed to create one of the most enduring and detailed myths of the modern age, one that has correctly predicted the direction of both scientific discovery and military disclosure. In either scenario, the story is a testament to the power of a secret and the endurance of a man who refused to keep it. As we look to the stars and the strange lights that move among them, the details of the S4 hangar remain a haunting possibility. The smooth metallic surfaces, the silent blue glow of a reactor, and the distortion of time and space aren't just elements of a thriller. They are the components of a mystery that is currently unfolding in real time. Whether the truth is ever fully revealed or remains buried in the desert sands, the story of the man who claimed to have touched the future will continue to challenge our understanding of what is possible. We are left watching the horizon, waiting for the next piece of the puzzle to fall into place. In the end, the truth of element 115 and the technology from S4 may not come from a single document or a public confession. It may come in the form of a slow, inevitable realization that the laws of physics we have mastered are only the beginning of a much larger story. We are like children looking through a keyhole at a vast, complex machine, trying to understand how it works without having the tools to open the door. Bob Lazar claimed he was allowed into the room for just a moment, and for that, he was chased back into the dark. But the light he brought with him continues to flicker, reminding us that there are things in our world and beyond it that we are not yet supposed to understand. The desert is quiet, but it is not empty. There are hangars built into mountains, and there are stories that refuse to die. As technology catches up to the claims of the past, the line between conspiracy and reality grows thinner every day. We may find that the most shocking part of Bob Lazar's story isn't the technology he described, but the fact that he was telling us the truth all along, while we were being told to keep our eyes on the ground. The mystery remains open, the evidence is mounting, and the crafts are still out there, moving in ways we can't yet explain, fueled by an element we are only just beginning to name. The truth is no longer hidden by distance, but by the very gravity we have yet to master.